My stepsister publicly shamed me for copying her dream wedding. So I crashed her party with truth so brutal it ended her wedding and career. I used to think that blended families would give me the sister I never had, until she accused me of stealing her entire wedding concept, in front of our whole family, not knowing I was about to expose the much bigger theft she'd been hiding for 2 years. I never thought my name would become synonymous with drama. But here we are. I'm Lillian Carter, 28 years old, and if you'd told me a year ago that I'd be at the center of a family scandal involving stolen wedding ideas and secret affairs, I would have laughed in your face. My life has always been pretty straightforward. I work as an interior designer for high-end residential clients in the city, spending my days transforming empty spaces into dream homes. There's something deeply satisfying about taking someone's vision and making it reality, about seeing the joy on their faces when everything comes together perfectly. I've built my career on originality and attention to detail. My clients come to me because they want something unique, something that reflects their personality rather than whatever's trending on Instagram this week. I take pride in that creativity, in being able to see possibilities where others see blank walls and empty rooms. It's not just my job. It's who I am at my core. 8 years ago, my world expanded in what I thought was the most wonderful way possible. Dad had been single for so long after Mom passed when I was 15, and honestly, I'd started to worry he'd spend the rest of his life alone. Then he met Patricia at a work conference, and everything changed. She was warm, funny, and brought this infectious energy into our quiet household. When they got married after a whirlwind 2-year courtship, I couldn't have been happier for him. But the real gift was Stephanie. Patricia's daughter was 18 when our parents married, just starting college, with this bubbly personality that could light up any room. I'd always wanted a sister. Being an only child had its advantages, but there were so many times I'd wished for someone to share secrets with, to have those late-night conversations about boys and dreams and everything in between. Stephanie seemed like the answer to prayers I didn't even know I'd been making. She was studying communications with dreams of becoming a lifestyle influencer, which seemed perfectly suited to her outgoing nature. Where I was content working behind the scenes, creating beauty for others to enjoy, Stephanie thrived in the spotlight. She loved being the center of attention, and honestly, she was good at it. Even in those early days, she had a natural charisma that drew people to her. Over the years, I watched her build something impressive from scratch. Her Instagram account, Steph's Style Sanctuary, started as a college hobby, but grew into something much bigger. She had a real talent for curating content that resonated with people: outfit inspiration, home decorating tips, relationship advice. By the time she graduated, she had enough followers to start making real money from brand partnerships and sponsored posts. Now, at 26, she has over 200,000 followers who hang on her every word. They trust her recommendations, share her posts, and treat her like a personal friend who just happens to give amazing advice about fashion, home decor, and romance. She's created this whole brand around aspirational living, showing people how to make their everyday lives more beautiful and Instagram-worthy. I'll admit, sometimes I felt a tiny twinge of envy watching her success. Not because I wanted to be an influencer myself, that kind of public exposure would give me hives, but because she made it look so effortless. While I was working 60-hour weeks to build my design business client by client, she was building an empire through carefully curated photos and clever captions. But mostly, I was proud of her. We'd found our rhythm as sisters over the years, each of us pursuing our passions in our own way. I preferred working behind the scenes, transforming spaces and making my clients' dreams come true. She loved being front and center, inspiring thousands of people to live more beautifully. It seemed like the perfect balance. Our little blended family had settled into a comfortable routine: Sunday dinners at Dad and Patricia's house, holiday celebrations that felt warm and genuine, birthday parties where we'd all gather to celebrate another year of this unexpected but wonderful family unit. Patricia had seamlessly stepped into the role of stepmother without ever trying to replace my mom, and Dad seemed happier than he'd been in years. Everything was genuinely perfect until this past spring, when fate decided to test just how strong our family bonds really were. The catalyst was love, or what we thought was love at the time. I got engaged first, in March, during what was supposed to be a relaxing weekend getaway to Napa Valley with Marcus. We'd been together for 3 incredible years, having met through a mutual friend's housewarming party, where I was helping with the decor, and he was the friend's college roommate visiting from out of town. Marcus was everything I'd ever wanted in a partner, and several things I hadn't even known I needed. He was kind in the quiet, consistent way that shows up in daily actions rather than grand gestures. He was genuinely supportive of my career, understanding that late nights and weekend site visits were part of the territory. Most importantly, he was interested in my work and dreams in a way that felt authentic rather than polite. When he proposed overlooking the vineyards at sunset, with a ring he'd designed himself based on sketches I'd made years earlier for a client's custom jewelry project, I knew he truly saw me. Not just the public version of me that smiled at family dinners, but the real me who stayed up late perfecting design presentations and had strong opinions about the emotional impact of different lighting fixtures. I was still floating on cloud 9 when Stephanie got engaged just 6 weeks later. Her announcement came as a surprise to everyone, mainly because she'd only been dating Kevin for what seemed like a relatively short time. I'd met him a few times at family gatherings. Nice enough guy, worked in marketing, had that quiet demeanor that suggested he was more comfortable listening than talking. He seemed sweet, and if Stephanie was happy, then I was happy for her. Looking back now, I should have paid more attention to the timeline. I should have asked more questions about how they met, where their relationship was heading, why everything seemed to be moving so fast. But I was caught up in my own engagement bliss, and genuinely excited about the prospect of planning weddings together. It seemed like such a lovely coincidence that we'd both found our forever people at the same time. The wedding planning phase started out exactly as I'd hoped it would. Both of our weddings were scheduled for the fall, to mine in October, hers in December. And our family dinners became animated discussions about venues, photographers, and whether fall weddings were becoming too trendy for their own good. Stephanie and I would text each other vendor recommendations and Pinterest inspiration, and I thought it was wonderful that we could share this special time together. During one particularly memorable family dinner in late April, I was describing my wedding vision to everyone, feeling that familiar excitement that comes from sharing something you've been dreaming about for years. I wanted a romantic outdoor ceremony with soft pink bridesmaid dresses, white hydrangeas everywhere, and a vintage garden party reception that would feel timeless and elegant. This wasn't some Pinterest-inspired impulse. I'd been collecting ideas for this exact aesthetic since college, building mood boards and saving photos long before I'd even met Marcus. As I talked, I noticed Stephanie's expression change in a way I couldn't quite interpret. She got unusually quiet, which definitely wasn't like her. Stephanie was never quiet during family conversations, especially ones about weddings. When Patricia turned to ask about her own wedding plans, expecting the usual enthusiastic response, Stephanie just mumbled something vague about still figuring things out and quickly changed the subject to Dad's latest golf tournament. At the time, I assumed she was just feeling overwhelmed by all the decisions that go into wedding planning. I remembered how paralyzing it had felt in those first few weeks, staring at vendor websites and trying to choose between 17 different shades of blush pink for napkins that most guests wouldn't even notice. A few weeks later, everything changed with a single blog post. I called her that evening, trying to keep my voice light. "Hey Steph, I saw your blog post about your wedding ideas. Funny how we both love that romantic vintage vibe." "Oh, that," she said, and I could hear her typing in the background. "Yeah, I've been planning this aesthetic for ages. I just hadn't shared it publicly until now." Something about her tone bothered me, but I pushed the feeling aside. Maybe it was just a coincidence. Great minds think alike, right? But the similarities kept coming. When I mentioned booking the vintage photo booth with the old-fashioned props, suddenly Stephanie had always dreamed of that exact same vendor. When I talked about having a coffee bar instead of a traditional bar setup, she launched into a story about how she'd been planning that for literally years. The breaking point came in July, during a family barbecue at Patricia and Dad's house. Most of our extended family was there, aunts, uncles, cousins, and everyone was asking about our wedding plans. I was excited to share some of the details Marcus and I had finalized, including our photographer and the specific layout we'd chosen for the ceremony. That's when Stephanie exploded. "I can't believe this," she said, her voice carrying across the entire backyard. Everyone stopped their conversations and turned to look at us. "Lillian, this is getting ridiculous." "What's getting ridiculous?" I asked, genuinely confused. "You copying every single detail of my wedding." Her voice was getting louder, and I could see relatives exchanging uncomfortable glances. The pink bridesmaid dresses, the hydrangeas, the vintage theme, even the photographer you just mentioned. I've had her booked for months. I felt my face burning with embarrassment and confusion. Stephanie, I think there's been some misunderstanding. Misunderstanding? She laughed, but there was nothing funny about it. You've been stealing my ideas since the moment I shared them with you. It's like you can't come up with anything original for your own wedding. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone staring at us, and my dad looked like he wanted to disappear into the ground. Patricia's face was a mask of concern and disappointment, directed at me. Stephanie, I said carefully, I planned these details months ago. I have Pinterest boards from college that— Oh please, she interrupted. Pinterest boards anyone can make at any time. I shared my vision with the family first, and now you're trying to claim it was yours all along. That's when my Uncle Robert spoke up, trying to mediate. Girls, surely there's enough wedding inspiration to go around. But Stephanie wasn't finished. It's not just inspiration, Uncle Robert. It's blatant copying. Every conversation we've had about weddings, every idea I've shared, suddenly becomes part of Lillian's original vision. I wanted to defend myself, to explain that I'd been dreaming of this exact wedding since long before Stephanie and Kevin even got together. But the faces around me suggested that the damage was already done. In the court of public opinion, I was losing badly. Patricia finally intervened. Why don't we all take a breath and discuss this calmly later? But the seed of doubt had been planted. Over the next few weeks, I noticed subtle changes in how family members interacted with me. Conversations about my wedding became stilted and brief. People seemed to be walking on eggshells, afraid to say anything that might restart the conflict. The worst part was that Stephanie doubled down on her accusations. She started posting passive-aggressive content on her blog and social media about people who lack creativity and wedding idea thieves. She never mentioned my name directly, but anyone who knew our situation would understand exactly who she was talking about. Her followers ate it up, leaving comments about how some people have no shame, and how imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, but also the most annoying. Each post felt like a knife twist, especially because I couldn't defend myself without looking petty or making the family drama more public. Marcus was incredibly supportive throughout all of this. Lily, he said one evening after I'd spent an hour scrolling through Stephanie's latest social media attacks, you know the truth, I know the truth. You've been showing me these exact wedding ideas since we started dating. Don't let her rewrite history. But knowing the truth and proving it felt like two different things entirely. How do you prove that your ideas came first when someone else is louder and more public about claiming them? That's when I started paying closer attention to Stephanie's fiancé, Kevin. He was a nice enough guy, tall, dark hair, worked in marketing, but something about him had always seemed familiar in a way I couldn't quite place. He was quiet around me, which I'd attributed to shyness, but now I wondered if there was something else going on. It was during a tense family dinner in August that the first piece of the puzzle clicked into place. Kevin was telling a story about his college days, mentioning specific details about Northwestern University that seemed oddly familiar. When he mentioned working at a campus coffee shop called The Daily Grind, my blood ran cold. I knew that coffee shop. I'd spent countless hours there during my senior year, usually with my boyfriend at the time. My boyfriend who had the same dark hair, the same height, the same quiet demeanor that I was looking at across the dinner table. My boyfriend whose name was Alex. Kevin was Alex, my ex-boyfriend Alex, who I dated for 8 months during my senior year, who I'd shared all my dreams with, including my detailed wedding fantasies. The same Alex who had mysteriously disappeared from my life without explanation, leaving me heartbroken and confused. The realization hit me like a freight train. I excused myself from dinner, claiming I felt sick, and spent the rest of the evening in my apartment frantically searching through old photos and social media posts. There he was, in pictures from 2021, tagged as Alex Mitchell in photos with mutual friends from college. Kevin Mitchell, Alex Mitchell. He'd simply started going by his middle name, but the worst part was the timeline. I had dated Alex from September 2021 to May 2022. According to Stephanie's social media history, she had started posting about the new love of my life in March 2022. They'd been together for 2 months before Alex and I officially broke up. My hands were shaking as I scrolled through Stephanie's old Instagram posts. There, Buried in her story's archives were photos that made my stomach turn. Alex's hands in the background of a coffee shop photo, a glimpse of his distinctive watch in a mirror selfie, a shadow that was unmistakably his profile in a sunset photo from March 2022. She'd been seeing him while he was still with me. But it got worse. As I dug deeper into my own old conversations with Alex, I found screenshots of texts where I'd shared my wedding dreams with him. Every detail that Stephanie was now claiming as her original ideas. The blush pink dresses, the white hydrangeas, the vintage aesthetic. It was all there in messages I'd sent to Alex 2 years ago. The son of a bitch had taken my dream wedding ideas and given them to his new girlfriend. And when I got engaged and started planning those exact same details, Stephanie accused me of copying her, not knowing that she was the one living out stolen dreams. I spent the next week in a daze, trying to figure out what to do with this information. Part of me wanted to confront them immediately, but I knew I needed to be strategic. If I was going to blow up their world, I needed to do it right. That's when Stephanie made the mistake that sealed her fate. She decided to escalate our conflict by writing a detailed blog post titled, "When Family Members Steal Your Wedding Dreams." She didn't use my name, but she laid out every accusation, every alleged theft, with enough detail that anyone who knew us would immediately understand she was talking about me. The post went viral within her community. Wedding bloggers shared it, her followers reposted it, and suddenly I was the anonymous villain in a story that thousands of people were reading and commenting on. The humiliation was unbearable, especially because I couldn't defend myself without revealing our family drama to the entire internet. But Stephanie wasn't done. She announced that she was hosting an engagement party at Patricia and Dad's house, a big celebration to show off her original wedding vision before I could copy any more of her ideas. She invited everyone. Family, friends, college classmates, even some of her blog followers who lived locally. That's when I knew it was time to act. I spent the next 2 weeks carefully preparing. I gathered screenshots of every conversation I'd had with Alex about my wedding dreams, dating back to 2021. I found old Pinterest boards with timestamps proving when I'd saved specific ideas. I even tracked down mutual friends from college who could verify the timeline of Alex's and my relationship. The night of Stephanie's engagement party, I arrived looking calm and put together, carrying a small folder that contained the truth. The party was everything Stephanie had claimed as her original vision. Blush pink decorations, white hydrangeas, vintage touches everywhere. Seeing my dreams laid out as someone else's achievement made my stomach turn, but I kept my expression neutral. Patricia had spared no expense, and the backyard looked like something out of a wedding magazine. Stephanie was in her element, holding court with a group of her followers, talking about her unique aesthetic sense and how she'd always known exactly what she wanted. Kevin, Alex, stood beside her, looking uncomfortable whenever she launched into stories about their relationship timeline. I noticed him glancing at me nervously throughout the evening, and I wondered if he suspected that I'd figured out who he really was. About an hour into the party, when everyone was gathered around for the toast, I made my move. "Before we celebrate," I said, standing up and projecting my voice so everyone could hear, "I think there's something important that Stephanie and Kevin need to share with everyone." The crowd turned to look at me, and I could see confusion and concern on faces throughout the group. Stephanie's smile faltered. "Lily," Patricia said, warning, "this isn't the time." "Actually, this is exactly the time," I said, opening my folder, "because this party is based on a lie." Stephanie's face went pale. "What are you talking about?" "I'm talking about the fact that Kevin isn't who he's pretended to be." I turned to address the crowd directly. "Kevin, would you like to tell everyone your real name? Or should I?" The silence was deafening. Kevin's face had gone ashen, and I could see the exact moment he realized his world was about to implode. "My name is Kevin," he said weakly. "Your full name," I pressed. "The name you went by when we were dating for 8 months in college." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Stephanie's mouth fell open, and she turned to look at Kevin with an expression of pure shock. "That's right," I continued. "Kevin Mitchell. Also known as Alex Mitchell, my ex-boyfriend from Northwestern. The same ex-boyfriend who disappeared from my life in May 2022 without explanation. Because he'd been cheating on me with my stepsister since March." The folder in my hands contained screenshots of everything. Text messages where Alex had complimented my wedding ideas, photos of us together from college, even Venmo transactions that proved our relationship timeline. But here's the really interesting part, I said, pulling out printed screenshots. Every single original wedding idea that Stephanie has accused me of stealing? I shared them with Alex 2 years ago. The blush pink bridesmaid dresses, the white hydrangeas, the vintage reception aesthetic. It's all here in messages I sent him in 2021. I started passing the screenshots around the crowd. People's expressions shifted from confusion to shock to anger as they realized what they were looking at. Stephanie didn't just steal my boyfriend, I said, my voice getting stronger with each word. She stole my wedding dreams, and then had the audacity to accuse me of copying her when I tried to plan the wedding I'd been dreaming of since college. Stephanie was crying now, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of rage and humiliation. "You're lying," she said, but her voice lacked conviction. "Am I?" I turned to Kevin. "Alex, would you like to tell everyone when you first heard about blush pink bridesmaid dresses and white hydrangeas? Was it from Stephanie, or was it from me?" Kevin looked like he was going to be sick. "Lillian, just answer the question. When did you first hear these wedding ideas?" The truth was written all over his face. "From you," he whispered. The crowd erupted. Stephanie's blog followers were frantically taking notes, probably already composing their own posts about this dramatic revelation. Family members were looking between Stephanie and me with expressions of shock and disappointment. Patricia looked devastated. "Stephanie, is this true?" But Stephanie was beyond rational conversation. "You planned this," she screamed at me. "You orchestrated this whole thing to humiliate me." "I didn't orchestrate anything," I said calmly. "I just finally decided to tell the truth that you and Alex have been hiding for 2 years." That's when my dad found his voice. "Kevin or Alex or whoever you are, I think you need to leave. Now." But Kevin wasn't done making things worse for himself. "Look, I can explain." "Explain what?" Stephanie turned on him with fury I'd never seen before. "Explain how you lied to me about your entire past? Explain how you gave me stolen wedding ideas and let me think they were my own? Explain how you let me humiliate myself by accusing your ex-girlfriend of copying me?" The party was officially over. Guests were gathering their things and filing out, many of them whispering excitedly about the drama they'd just witnessed. Stephanie's followers looked particularly pleased to have front-row seats to what would undoubtedly become a legendary story in the wedding blogging community. But I wasn't finished yet. "There's one more thing," I said, pulling out the final piece of evidence. "Stephanie, you wrote a blog post calling me a wedding idea thief. You made me out to be a pathetic copycat who couldn't come up with her own ideas. But here's a screenshot of the Pinterest board I created in March 2020. 2 full years before you even met Alex. Every single idea you've claimed as your own is right here, time-stamped and documented." I handed the screenshot to Patricia, who studied it with growing horror. "Mom," Stephanie pleaded, but Patricia held up a hand to stop her. "I think," Patricia said slowly, "that you owe your sister a very public apology." But Stephanie wasn't ready to admit defeat. "This is insane. You're all acting like Lillian is some innocent victim. She planned this whole thing to destroy my engagement party." "I didn't plan anything," I said. "I just got tired of being called a thief by the actual thief." That's when Marcus appeared at my side, having arrived late from work to find the party in complete chaos. "What's going on here?" "Stephanie and Kevin have been living a lie," I said simply. "And they got caught." Over the next hour, as the last guests departed and the family sat down for an emergency meeting, the full scope of the deception became clear. Kevin admitted to everything: the cheating, the stolen ideas, even the fake timeline they'd created to make their relationship seem legitimate. Stephanie tried to defend herself, claiming she hadn't known about my history with Alex when they started dating, but the evidence suggested otherwise. There were photos and messages that proved she'd been aware of our connection and had deliberately hidden it. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Patricia was furious with Stephanie for lying to the family and humiliating me. Dad was disgusted with Kevin's deception and asked him to leave the house immediately. Extended family members who had witnessed the confrontation spread the story throughout our social circle within days. But the most satisfying consequence was watching Stephanie's carefully constructed online persona crumble. Her blog followers, who had initially supported her in the wedding theft drama, turned on her when the truth came out. Comments flooded in calling her a hypocrite and a fraud. Several wedding bloggers who had shared her original post about me wrote follow-up pieces exposing the real story. Her Steph's Style Sanctuary blog lost nearly half its followers within a week. Brands that had been considering partnerships suddenly went silent. The wedding vendor who had been featured in her engagement party post demanded that their photos be removed from her social media. Kevin, I couldn't bring myself to call him Alex anymore, tried to reach out to me through mutual friends, wanting to explain his side of the story. I blocked him on every platform and told our friends that I had no interest in hearing from him ever again. Stephanie and Kevin postponed their December wedding indefinitely. According to Patricia, they were working through trust issues, which was a polite way of saying their relationship had imploded under the weight of all the lies they'd built it on. As for me, I continued planning my October wedding exactly as I'd always envisioned it. The blush pink bridesmaid dresses, the white hydrangeas, the vintage reception. Every detail that Stephanie had tried to claim as her own became part of the most beautiful day of my life. Patricia and Dad went out of their way to make amends for how they'd initially handled the situation. They paid for upgraded flowers and helped cover the cost of the photographer that both Stephanie and I had wanted to book. More importantly, they publicly supported my choices and made it clear to the extended family that I had been wronged. The wedding was everything I'd dreamed it would be. Standing at the altar with Marcus, surrounded by the aesthetic I'd been planning since college, I felt a deep sense of vindication. These weren't stolen ideas or copied dreams, they were authentically mine, and now everyone knew it. But the best moment came during the reception, when Patricia stood up to give a toast. To Lillian and Marcus, she said, raising her glass. Thank you for reminding us that authenticity always wins in the end. May your marriage be built on the same foundation of truth and honesty that brought us all to this beautiful celebration. It was her way of acknowledging what had happened without making the day about the drama. I appreciated her grace in handling a situation that could have torn our family apart. 6 months later, I heard through the family grapevine that Stephanie and Kevin had finally broken up for good. She'd moved back to her hometown and was working for a local marketing firm. Having given up on her blogging career after the scandal destroyed her credibility, Kevin had reached out to a few mutual friends, apparently wanting to apologize to me, but I had no interest in reopening that chapter of my life. Some betrayals are too deep to forgive, especially when they come from people who should have protected you instead of exploiting you. The experience taught me valuable lessons about protecting my boundaries and trusting my instincts. When something feels wrong in a relationship, whether family, romantic, or friendship, it usually is wrong. I'd ignored red flags about Stephanie's competitive behavior and Kevin's familiar mannerisms because I wanted to believe the best about people I cared about. Now I know better. Authentic relationships don't require you to dim your light or hide your dreams to make someone else comfortable. Real family supports your happiness instead of sabotaging it for their own benefit. Marcus and I have been married for 8 months now, and our relationship has only gotten stronger after weathering that storm together. He stood by me when my own family doubted me, and he helped me find the courage to speak my truth when it mattered most. Sometimes people ask me if I regret exposing Stephanie and Kevin so publicly, if I wish I'd handled it more privately. But I don't have any regrets. They chose to make their accusations public, to humiliate me in front of family and strangers alike. They built their entire relationship on lies and stolen dreams. I simply chose to tell the truth. In the end, I learned that sometimes the people who shout loudest about being wronged are the ones doing the most wrong themselves. And sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's just living authentically and refusing to let anyone else rewrite your story.